My parents bought their first house back in 1972. It was a fixer-upper, but they decided to move in right away and fix things as quickly as time and money permitted. Within a few days of moving in, the neighbors came over to introduce themselves. They also let my parents know that the previous owners had moved out after a nasty divorce. They had lost their second baby from what they thought was sudden infant death syndrome, and their relationship went downhill from there. My parents were horrified, more so because they were newly pregnant and couldn't imagine going through such a thing. They eventually pretty much forgot about it. Life went on. They were in love with their new life in their new house. In preparation for the baby, they decided to wallpaper the nursery. Now, my dad told my mom there was no need in wallpapering the inside of the closet, but she insisted, so my dad complied. My mom was kneeling down, scraping off old paint inside of the closet when her eyes fell upon something that made her blood turn to ice. Written in crayon, at about eye level for a kindergartner, in childish handwriting was, "I killed the baby." I was playing around with a radio once when I was a kid, just slowly spanning through the static, trying to find a station. I'd found an old television antenna and attached it to the side of our house. I then ran a wire out my window to it with an alligator clip attached to the radio antenna, allowing me to get a broader range of signals. So I'm sitting there, early in the morning, around 2 a.m., slowly sweeping frequencies, and suddenly I get to this station that's playing this very weird crackling sound. It sounded sort of like cracking knuckles, or maybe Rice Krispies cereal, but with a fixed, rhythmic pattern instead of being random. I sat there and listened to it for a second. Then it suddenly stopped, and this faint voice says, "It doesn't work. We're already dead. We're already dead." It took a second for the weight of the words to hit me, but when they did, I freaked the fuck out and almost threw the radio across my room. I'm pretty sure it was just someone messing around with a radio transmitter, but it scared the shit out of me at the time. A group of my friends were staying at this remote cabin that one of my friend's cousins owned. There were no roads leading to the cabin, and it was a good 3/4 of a day hike from where you parked the cars. I couldn't go at the same time as everyone else due to work obligations, so I decided to head up the same day but later. This meant I would have to camp for a night by myself, though I didn't care. I was kinda looking forward to it, as I've never camped alone before. So I was in the middle of these woods when the sun went down. I got my camp set up in this small clearing, probably 40 feet across. I got my campfire going and pitched my small one-person tent. I do all that camping stuff like cooking hot dogs on a stick over the fire and s'mores. I probably stayed up for a good 2 to 3 hours after dark. The entire time, I thought I heard stuff moving in the woods on the edge of the clearing. I didn't think anything of it at first, because the woods are full of animals, but as the night went on, I realized that whatever it was just circling the clearing over and over. Once I started paying attention, it made 4 or 5 laps around before I decided to get up and investigate. The noise stopped as soon as I stooped up, and I thought I heard some sounds going away through the woods. I just shrugged it off, thinking it was some fox that was curious that got scared when I stood up. I decided it's time to sleep, so I doused the fire and climbed into my tent. I start to doze off and stay in that half asleep, half awake state for a while. I normally hear weird stuff when I'm in this state, so I don't think much of it when I hear a voice. Something wakes me all the way up though, and I realize the voice is real and outside of my tent. It's just above a whisper, and I'm not sure if it was another language or if they were just speaking English in such a way that I couldn't understand. I lay there for some time, I don't know how long, listening and waiting for something to happen. There is just enough moonlight to light up the walls of the tent, so I can see when a hand presses into the wall of my tent down near my foot. This freaks me out, and I sit up quickly. Whoever was outside of the tent booked it out of there, running full sprint through the woods. I get out of the tent and shine my flashlight around and see nothing. I was expecting there to be a bloody handprint on the tent, but nope. Didn't sleep that night, packed up camp at first light that morning, and booked it to the cabin. We'll never forget this one. My wife and I used to live in a townhome that backed to some woods. We both took off work one day to get some things done in the yard, cutting the grass, weeding our large flower beds, laying mulch, etc. Our yard wasn't big. It took about 2 full grass clipping bags. I would walk a couple feet into the woods and dump them in a pile. As I'm walking back to empty the second bag, something in the middle of the woods catches my eye. Something out of place, and it's moving. I crouched down to get a better look, and I just froze. At first, I could make out a pair of shoes, just swaying back and forth, and then was able to see the legs and body of a teenager. There, in the middle of the woods, was a teenage boy who had hung himself. Next to the tree, I could see a skateboard leaning up against it. I yelled for my wife to call the police and started running back to try and save him, but he was gone. His body was limp, and his head was just slumped over. His hair was slowly blowing in the breeze. The cops came and quickly cut him down, and then they were gone. As it turns out, he was having problems getting along with his parents, and this is what he decided to do. My old coworker had a son that was in his mid-30s, and he had a son named Hunter who was 4 or 5. She said that Hunter would have bad dreams and that he would sleep with his dad when he got scared. One night, his dad woke up because he heard Hunter calling him, but he was calling him by his name, not Dad. So he went into his room and he was asleep. He woke him up saying, "Hunter, you were calling me, is everything okay?" And Hunter said, "Dad, when they call you, you're not supposed to answer," and fell back asleep. He asked him about it in the morning, but he said he didn't remember saying it. I get chills when I think about it. I was once in a hot tub with some friends late at night, and we were all telling some stories. One of the guys told us this one, the story of a girl he knows. Not sure if it's true or not, but multiple people in the hot tub verified it. So one day, this girl was called over to babysit. She did a lot for these people, so it was routine for her. Anyways, she was told to put the kids to bed at 9, and she did. After she put them to bed, she started watching TV and doing homework, waiting for the parents to come home. But then she started hearing some noises coming from the basement, like pans falling and stuff. She just ignored it and thought it was the washing machine. Anyways, a little later, she starts hearing the noises again. She decides to call the police and tell them she was hearing noises coming out of the basement at the house she's babysitting at. The lady at the station told her there's a patroller in her area and that he'll be at the house in 20 minutes. Anyways, in about 5 minutes, she hears a knock on the door. She answers, and it's a full SWAT team. She asked, "I thought they were just sending a patroller," and one of the guys told her, "After you hung up the phone, we heard a second phone on the line hang up." Ended up, there was a man in the basement listening to the conversation on the phone. The lady in the station waited and heard him hang up, then immediately sent the SWAT team to help. They went downstairs and caught him. He was wanted for multiple cases of rape. I used to work in a trailer park for my parents. Quite often, people would start using methamphetamine, begin to fall behind on rent, and get evicted. Whenever we evicted someone, their trailer was usually too torn up to actually do anything useful with. Essentially, to prevent having an ugly trailer in the middle of the park, we'd buy it from them and just tear it down. Anyway, the creepy part of the story. Many of these occupants had children. More than half of all the children's rooms I found had locks on the doors, from the outside. Inside the children's rooms, it was always quite evident that the kids would sometimes be locked inside for days at a time, due to the bathroom corners that would sometimes appear. The doors on the insides of the rooms typically had scratch marks along the edge of the door and the door frame. Getting rid of all the stuff inside before beginning demolition always frightened me. I was always afraid that I'd end up finding a dead child in there somewhere among the filth. It never happened, but the odds of it potentially happening were, in my opinion, quite high. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I would normally take an after-school bath. Keep in mind that my bathroom was tiny, and there was no way for someone to hide in there without being spotted. So my mom watches me go in the tub. She gives me a toy and walks away to the kitchen to finish her cooking. I wanted to splash around in the water with my toy, so I closed the glass sliding door of the tub. As soon as I closed the sliding door, it quickly opened on its own. My tiny little mind couldn't fathom how that happened. A few seconds later, the sliding door rapidly opened and closed for a few seconds. I started screaming, and my mother ran to the bathroom to find me crying in the tub. I told her what happened, but she didn't believe me. The sliding door was closed when she found me crying in the bathroom. For over 20 years it bugged me. Was it part of my imagination? It felt completely and entirely real. I was heading to my then boyfriend's house late one night, and we took this back road as a shortcut. It was dark. I don't remember being able to see the moon at all, and very few other cars were on this road, so all we really had were our headlights as far as sources of light. I was talking to him, and turned my head back to look down the road when I saw this old man crossing, wearing a plaid shirt and moving rather quickly. I remember the plaid vividly, and he seemed to really stand out in the dark. Before I had time to react properly, my boyfriend drove through the man. I watched him pass through the hood, the dashboard, down the middle of the car and vanish. It was like time had suddenly slowed down, then caught back up with itself. My boyfriend saw nothing, but I insisted we never take that road again after. In middle school, class was letting out, and my best friend and I were walking to our buses. He had to stop by the music room to pick up his instrument to take home, so I told him goodbye. I kept walking, turned around the corner, and he popped out of another door with his instrument and startled me on purpose. I didn't know how he had gotten there so fast, but I didn't think much of it. We walked and talked for another minute, and as I was walking away from him to get on my bus, I told him, goodbye for good this time. That weekend, he was killed in a car crash in front of his house. He was ejected from his car, and it rolled over him. Now I relive that last interaction I had with him every once in a while. Definitely creepy.